We are officially live. That's right. I believe, we are officially live, and we want to let you know that this is race and ethnic relations on campus. Our first live show. This is show number 12. I am Dr. B, and I want to thank you for listening to our show. This is show number 12, and it's entitled The Positive Outcomes of Good Race and Ethnic Relations. So I want you to join me in this show on positive and good outcomes of race relations. For the purpose of this show is primarily to help college students developing friendships with individual college students who look different than them, since we tend to hear all about the negative situations related to race and ethnic relations. This show is going to focus on the positive and good outcomes of race and ethnic relations. And since this is our first live show, I want to let you know that I started these shows that really originated from my course, Race and Ethnic Relations: Discovering New Solutions, at East Carolina University. And I want to have these podcast shows so that I can extend the conversation. I can only talk about so much during our course. I wanted to have these podcast shows and now live podcast shows available for the general audience, and gives us an opportunity to really dive in to a lot of these issues that we normally kind of walk around and neglect and overlook and try to sidestep and try to be politically correct about. But now we can go a lot more into the details of these issues in the podcast shows. And this particular podcast show is about the positive outcomes of good race and good race and ethnic relations. And it also stems from my 2018 book, Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus: Understanding Empowerment and Solutions for College Students, and published by ABC Clio Prager Publishers. And I have such a great response from this particular book, and it's a really practical application of how to provide students concrete strategies of how to reanalyze all of these issues that they're coming across as they're in their college lives and their college experience. And I recognize that they need some assistance, and they're looking for assistance. That's the thing about it. Teaching college courses for over 30 years, you can kind of read your students, and this particular generation of students truly need a little bit of guidance. They know where they want to go, but they need some parameters to develop some new relationships. And this is where I want to highlight, at least in this show, the positive outcomes of good race and ethnic relations. So with that said, please do not hesitate to send a message, email me at ejb678@gmail.com. That's ejb678@gmail.com. And I want to really give a shout out to Podbean Live, and Podbean platform for showcasing us, giving us opportunity to go live. And with that, I do have I did a little test, and so again, thank you, Podbean. I hope you hear that. Yes, I truly appreciate their support and giving me an opportunity to at least start this live production of race and ethnic relations. With that said, now one of the things that I'd like to do is, like I said, this show is about positive outcomes, and one of the areas in which I highlighted positive outcomes in my book is that there you really have to spell out things to our new audiences, to new students. And in my book, and also what I do in my class, is highlight the positive concepts, and I go through the negative concepts. And but matter of fact, we really discuss some really heavy things in my class, and in the show, I've already covered some very heavy things and that's happening in the country. That's right. But in this, and really heavy things. And if you just look at the previous shows, I go straight to it. And yet there's tend to be a neglect of why is it so important. Here we are. Why is it so important to have positive and good race and ethnic relations? Why is it so positive in 2019, 2020? Well, again, two concepts that come to mind when you're looking at positive concepts. One is cultural relativism, and the other is enculturation. Okay. Number one, cultural relativism and enculturation. Cultural relativism basically is key to this concept. It's basically it allows individuals to begin to think and organize themselves towards and examine values and beliefs and behaviors of another individual or group from their own internal logic. Again, let me repeat that. The basis of cultural relativism, where an individual attempts to understand the values, beliefs, and behaviors of another individual or group from their own internal logic. That allows, if you have a good relationship with a person who's different than you, you start to see the world from their perspective. That's a big step for many students today. See the world from another person's perspective, their values, their beliefs, their history, their situation. A lot of students today don't go there. They tell me that. This is what they tell me. They don't want to go there because they want to stay in their own comfort zone. But guess what? Being cultural relativistic, moving towards a cultural relativism approach allows the individual student to take on those values, those beliefs, those behaviors of another individual who just happen to look different than you, and appreciate where they're coming from and appreciate how they view the world, what type of actions they take, what type of outcomes they take. And guess what? That helps you gain a broader perspective in life during college, and most importantly, after college. Because that's what we're preparing you for. Preparing you for after college. Not now, but after college. And you know what happens after college? The real world. That's when you truly are on your own. And when you're on your own, guess what? You're going to be dealing with a lot of folks from different values, different beliefs, different histories, different lifestyles. So it's so important to get used to it now. And that's the reason why I emphasize, particularly in the basic concepts of race and ethnic relations, one of the first key elements is cultural relativistic perspective. Get used to it now. Try it now. It's okay now. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to scare you. Is it something that you're going to feel very scared about? No, you won't. It's something that is a part of growing up. But get used to it now. Take that chance now, not later, when it's a bit more apprehensive and scary. So that is one of the really first basic concepts of developing positive relations with other folks who happen to look different than you. Take on their perspective. And the other approach is enculturation. where it begins, where you embrace more of the cultural relativistic perspective and you immerse yourself into another person's completely different world. It's where you also are accepted by members of that other group. That is a key major step where you accept, not only you appreciate their values and beliefs and behavior, you become accepted, you become enculturated, you participate in all the some whatever the cultural campus activity, the college activities within that particular group. You become enculturated. You become a part of the group. They've accepted you. And they want to share their culture with you. That's that's another big step where you become enculturated. And I can see many of my students, when they do become enculturated in another group, their perspective completely changes. They take life completely differently. They start to see life differently. I did it during my college years. Came enculturated into a different culture, going through college, exposing myself to another world. But I can see that this is so important today, where I can see students today are hesitant to be enculturated into another group because they think they're going to lose their identity. Where they're coming from. You're not going to lose your identity. You're going to become enculturated into another group. And hopefully another group and another group. Where you'll be accepted. And that just expands your awareness, expands your appreciation, expands your opportunity to network even more, but expands your worldview. And all too often, we feel very, very limited. Once you are ready to graduate, you feel very limited. Well, guess what? This is the time right now in college, freshman year, sophomore, junior, even senior year, to enculturate yourself into as many groups as possible on your campus. And there's always various groups on every campus, private, university, or public. There's so many groups where you can eventually become enculturated. And that means, yes, it means spending a little bit more time outside of your world. That's right. Spending a little bit more time outside of your inclusive world and getting to know other groups on campus. Uh-oh. Yeah, yeah, that means that you have to spend a little bit more time outside of your world. That's okay. As opposed to just going to classes back and forth, back and forth. Staying in your world, staying with your headphones on, staying for texting your friends. But this is the opportunity to enculturate yourself to as many groups as possible. That's what it's really all about. Enculturating yourself. That's a positive outcome. And then we see there's different studies. And again, I like to share with you, some of there's research studies on the positive outcomes. And for this show, I'm not going to go through the research studies. This show is not about that. But let's look at some practical implications. Since this is a live show, and I want to make sure. Let me see. Here we go. Okay, I see that. All right, I'm just checking my system in. Okay, I invited some guest listener caller. Okay, I'm just double checking. I'm going to send a few. I'm actually sending a special message to our audience right now. There you go. I just sent it out. I'm 15 minutes in. And again, want to make sure that individuals have an opportunity to share their point of view, but particularly not just during our show, but after our show. I appreciate any feedback at all after our show, because that's the most important thing. But again, this show is about positive outcomes, and I'm going to go to the other practical implications. Things that I do in my class. Some of the practical implications of positive outcomes, and this is where you experience, with on campus. There's all different opportunities to learn from other groups, and many times we take it for granted. An individual can pick up all different types of positive things, but one of the practical implications are language, pop culture, music, and guess what? Food. Yeah, food. Guess what? I know how it is in the regular eating pattern of most college students, of what it's like day in, day out in your cafeteria food. Food is a necessity. Food is a necessity each and every day. But usually let me just say, after a month, you'll probably get tired of the same cafeteria food, your meal plan. And one of the practical applications of developing good race and ethnic relations, is that you can actually start experiencing the different types of foods from people who are different than you. Many times, your colleague or your student friend in your class, they may have a different eating preference, and they may have certain, ethnic foods that they normally eat, and it's probably outside your regular eating pattern. So finding out what your friend eats sometimes expands your eating pattern and expands the types of foods that you eat. That's the most basic thing. Food. Each and every one of us are very regimented in what we do. And when you're on campus, yes, there's variety at the cafeteria, but many times there's all types of foods. When you meet a person who is different than you, has a different culture, have a different eating pattern, and you may ask them just in casual conversation, what do you normally eat? And you might be surprised what your fellow classmate may eat on a daily basis that may be different than you. And you probably say, wow, I didn't even realize that. Didn't realize that. And guess what? That food more likely is really good than the same cafeteria food, same dorm food, same food that's normally made, processed, or even, the delicacies that they have at the different eateries on campus now. Again, that becomes very regimented too. So you have to be creative when you're staying in and living dorm life again and again and again. You want to change things up. Food is a necessity. Food is an icebreaker. Just basic food. That's all it is. And you'll be surprised what you can experience when you expand your your preferences on the types of foods that you eat. Another practical example is music. Yeah, music. Uh, that always helps people come together. Yes, music. You know how music tends to sometimes it divides, but many times it brings folks together. And the type of music that most college students love or hear or prefer, and there's a wide variety. But there's certain, and I'm not even going to speculate what type of music is on most college campuses now. But there are certain things that truly bring students together, and music is one of them. And sometimes it's advantageous for you to kind of listen to what your friend might, or not even your friend, just an associate in your class, what he or she may listen to on a regular basis, as opposed to the same music that you listen to. Again, expanding your preferences, expanding your experiences with just listening to another person's music. That's a positive outcome of good race and ethnic relations. And many times, it may open up the other individual's preferences. Again, that's happened to me in college way back when. when I'm not going to mention exactly when, but when I was exposed to, I'm an R&B person, or rhythm R&B, and as a freshman, yeah, yeah, I'm going to say it. As a freshman, I had I got used to other types of music, uh, really mainstream pop music and hard rock and roll music, serious rock and roll, serious rock, hard rock, and didn't think I would like that. I was very biased, and I'm just R&B person. But once I heard on a regular basis my roommates hard rock music, I said, "Wow, there's nothing wrong with that." Matter of fact, I started to like it. Yes, little Dr. B started started to like it, and I actually grown to at times, particularly in freshman year, grown to prefer it because it was just uh, very timely at that time. So again, I was surprised. Yes, early Dr. B. Surprised about expanding my music preference. And again, you never know what will happen when you let your guard down and start expanding outside your immediate network of friends. Because it's so easy, so comfortable to stay in your, let me just say, small world and socialize with people who will look exactly like you. That limits you. Thereby, you you limit yourself and you limit others. Yeah, that's not good. That's not good. So again, it's so important in just the most practical situations of expanding your preference in food, music, and you would be surprised how much you step into another person's world and those simple things, as well as other areas as I is I'll just mention pop culture, whatever the culture is, whatever the latest thing is, uh, uh, to have a dialogue about what's happening on the latest news nationally, but also locally. And it just happens to come from another person or another group. And you can connect on the different. So I'm doing quotes in the studio. Pop culture stuff. What's the latest information that's going out there on the social media, on Instagram, and other activities out there on social media, and how on Twitter and all of that. So it's always interesting to stay in tune with pop culture, but also see what the other person perceives as significant in their own world. And now it's so again, I'm from the old school. So I'm always catching up with pop culture today among my students. And one way I catch up, now here's one way I catch up with my students, is when I have an exercise on slang term. Now this is so funny. When I do this exercise, and again, I do this every year, and I've been doing this for, recently I just did an exercise in my class where students, I break them up in, how many groups? 6 groups. I break them up in 6 groups. And I said, tell me, what are the latest slang terms that you use? They look at me like, what? You really want to hear? I said, I want to learn what are the latest slang terms that you regularly use amongst yourself. And that you could just see the excitement in their eyes. They just bubbling over like, wow, we can really share this. And I break them into groups during this regular class. And they converse amongst themselves, and you can see within the groups, some individuals are much more in line with the latest slang terms, whereas others in the group they're actually learning from the other person. But within the group, they finally decide upon maybe the top 5 or top 10 slang terms. And then I have them, now here's what I do. I have them come to the board. That's right. Come to the board in the lecture hall and put on the board the top 5, the top 10 slang terms that they use. And I get a representative, a leader from each group to come to the board. They put the top 5, and they all have to stay up there. And then I give them the opportunity to identify what the top 5, top 10 are. But not only just tell us the entire class, but also pronounce the word. What's the meaning of it? What's the meaning of it? How it's actually used in a regular conversation. So every time, each and every year that I've been doing this, the students just love it. Because one of the things, they love it because it allows them to connect with the other students. It allows them to engage with other students who they never thought they would, but they are interacting, they're engaging, they're having fun in their own language and style. That's the most important. They're having fun, and they don't even realize they're crossing boundaries. They're outside of their immediate race and ethnicity world, and then they cross boundaries and connect with individuals who are different than them, because they come together on the type of language, type of slang terms that their generation uses. They're coming together. That is probably the best thing that I really enjoy about that particular exercise. And once they come together, they realize, and then I have each and every group to put their major issues on the board, and then we go through them, and I get them to pronounce it a certain way, and then I say, what are the common, or do we see common issues here? And what is the cause of, why is it there are common issues, and why is it so important? And what happens there, the outcome of that is that they see there is certain structure of various slang terms. There's a history, and they have multiple meanings, and yet they allow people to come together, students to come together just by sharing their individual language, their slang terms that they use on a regular basis, not the formal, but the slang term that they use when they're talking amongst their friends. And it crosses over race and ethnic groupings. And they enjoy that. So, and that's how they connect with one another. So language is a positive outcome of good race and ethnic relations. You can see where students come together in their particular, and I'm just learning as much as possible. I'm just taking it all in. And quite frankly, I try to be as naive as possible and say, oh, I can't relate. But many of the terms, they are of today's generation. And a lot of them I don't have the meaning, but some of them I do. And some of them I've used way back in the day myself. But most of them I don't use, obviously. But it's refreshing to hear and discover the new meanings of these terms, which really brings students together. And that's my major message from this particular show. Show number 12, our live stream. Language brings students together. So does language brings students together. So does pop culture. So does music, and so does food. But you can really see how language brings students together and how it is a positive outcome of good race and ethnic relations. So there you go. This is a special show, live stream show, and I probably will. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do a post outcome of the show. Yes, a post outcome of this show. And hopefully it will give you another side of how sometimes challenging it is put on a live show, but also see how far I can reach new audiences. So please do not hesitate to email me at ejb678@gmail.com. Please come to my website, Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus, www.Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus. Again, come to my podcast and subscribe to my podcast on Podbean. Thank you, Podbean, for hosting us. And so, again, this is a special show, show number 12, the positive outcomes of good race and ethnic relations. I am Dr. B. I'm your host, and we're going to continue this dialogue, continue this discussion, and hopefully we're going to have more and more folks join in. So thank you again. And remember, try to be as positive as possible when you develop or when you look at a person who happens to be different than you. This is Dr. B.